Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info at yourmoneyontap.com. My name is Seth Cressman, and here with Dan Mickelin and Ben Brayshaw. How are you guys today?
I'm doing great, Seth. Great start to the day here, and excited about this show. And, really just feeling good in general. I think this is a show that's going to be helpful for a lot of people. And I think just kind of help people set that frame of reference, kind of where they're at in life, where they're going, and, hopefully take a little bit of pressure off people.
Day's starting off okay. I just digging through the material today. I'm interested in our audience's interest in our show today. I think it's there's a lot of perspectives on what's coming down the pike here, and I'd like to get some feedback. So I'm encouraging people to reach out. You
guys are welcome to get a hold of us. One of our favorite things to do here is if you go to the podcast and subscribe, and go ahead and just leave us, however many stars. Really, it's for us, we just love the engagement and the honesty. Truthfully, just let us know what you think about the show. Get a hold of us at info@yourmoneyontap.com, and we've got some Money on Tap gear we would love to send you out. I promise you, it's nicer than your ordinary ballpoint pen. We have got the best ballpoint pens. You don't want to miss out on. It's usually a little more than a pen, folks. But either way, we would love to connect with you there and hear about the content that we're going to be delivering today, as Ben requested, because this show is about beyond the net worth, defining wealth in today's landscape. It's a show that's going to go all sorts of different directions. It's going to have twists and turns and highs and lows. It's everything that you could possibly want from three financial planners on microphones talking about what is the truth around net worth and wealth. And we talk about being successful. It's one of the things that we almost always leave our show at the end of the day, just sharing and encouraging you to be successful in your investing. And there's going to be some things here that you're going to want to take some time with. And, as I love, Dan, what you share, it's like maybe take a little bit of the pressure off. Maybe that's going to happen for you. And that's not typically what I don't feel like that's typically what's happening when we're on air with people. Cause, I feel like, finances is one of those places that we really challenge ourselves. We challenge ourselves to grow. And it's I feel like, Dan, what you're saying is that's going to happen inevitably. Like there's deliverables here that you've never considered, and it's going to push your boundaries. But part of that might be just coming back into a place where, hey, we're going to move forward. We're going to be successful because we're going to have some new definitions and some understanding that's going to add value in areas that we've never considered before.
Seth, I really think you bring up a really interesting point. And I mean, being financial planners, I mean, we work with people in almost every financial dynamic. I mean, from, the charitable side of our business and working with people who are struggling with debt and kind of going through that process, who still have jobs and still contribute to 401ks, but, debt's kind of gotten the other side of them. And sometimes it's hard to get back to the right side of debt. And then there's the people who just have, kind of almost uncountable wealth where it doesn't really matter how much money they really have, but they don't need it all. And that's kind of a social conversation inside our world these days, it seems like. But we meet people with, large amounts of money, medium-sized amounts of money, and, just kind of entering the initial investment wealth stage. And, I have a lot to say about this topic. I mean, because it's really interesting. We get some of the most profound questions on this topic, and I think when people come and meet with us, they know that we see people at lots of different stages, and they just want to hear. They honestly, most people just want to hear us say, "Hey, everything's going to be okay. You've done well." Because people always, no matter how much money they have, honestly think they don't have enough. So, you walk through the door, people are concerned that there's some sort of judgment or something like that. And honestly, I don't really care what people have. It's never been like, there's just never been an issue or a question mark or whatever. It's like my job is to roll up my sleeves and, figure out how to, get you to where you want to be, finding that success in your investing. I think it's like, when you hire a plumber to come to your house, they're not judging the type of, piping that was done necessarily beforehand, or that, you don't have enough toilets. They're just fixing the toilet, that's maybe broken, or the shower or something. There's no real judgment on you personally. And I think that's a misnomer in our industry, guys. I mean, Dan, how many people we meet with, they're always like, yeah, I really wish I had put more away or done more. And it almost comes from a level of almost insecurity that they haven't done enough.
Yeah, I think I was kind of going through the conversation in my own head as you were saying that, because almost regardless of who we meet with, those kind of initial parts of the conversation where it's the, okay, let's talk about what you do have. What have you saved? After we go through goals and the kind of getting to know you on a personal level, there's always a level of anxiety I can see, and typically it's a couple, but not always, even an individual. And when it gets to that point of like, okay, show me the cards, right? Okay, put it out on the table. Let's see what we got to work with here. And the look in their face and just the kind of emotional temperature of the room, people seem to always feel the same, even though when they do turn those cards over, it's the whole range. It's from very, very little to just absolutely tons, So people, I think, have a real struggle with the perspective around, what's enough. And I think what this conversation today is going to hopefully leave people with, well, the what's enough isn't so much a number. It's, how does it fit your life? How are you living? How are you getting by? How do you feel about where you're at today? And I think that's hopefully what people walk away with, understanding that, it isn't, obviously money matters, but the answer to this question isn't something that we can just tell you. What's the number I need? I don't know. It's almost impossible to say. There's so many other factors into that.
Well, Ben, you were talking about using the plumbing analogy, and I'm the advisor in the room that if I walk into your house and you don't have enough bathrooms, I'll tell you. That's okay.
You are not. You are by no means that person. That's
I'm going to tell you the truth. You need more bathrooms. But by the way, it's time for Money in the News.
First up today from the New York Post, thank you, Shannon Thaler. Baby boomers swindled out of $3.4 billion after falling victim to phone scammers in 2023. This according to the FBI. And that number just jumped off the page when I saw this. I mean, that seems absolutely astounding to consider that much wealth, as we're speaking of today, has been, robbed from baby boomers, from these, obviously criminals and thieves that are operating in more and more complex and technical basis. But, a lot of this is coming from, kind of the simpler opportunities that have always been out there. They're just operating over the phone and convincing people to divulge personal information that gives them access to accounts, or convincing people to move money from one account to another, which has been set up by these same scammers to receive those funds and just take off with it. They received, this is according to the FBI, over 100,000 complaints from individuals aged 59 to 77. So, I mean, just that sheer volume of complaints, which they firmly believe is widely underreported, and you'd have to believe that. A lot of people get scammed and out of embarrassment or for whatever reason don't even report these issues. But with that volume, 100,000 incidences in that age group, clearly it's being targeted. There's no doubt about it. These thieves are aware of who has the money and the wealth these days, and who might be likely susceptible to this kind of an approach, and they are really narrowing in and targeting these people. So, word of caution to everybody out there, regardless of age, but particularly if you yourself are in this age group or you have loved ones in this age group, you have to be extra vigilant these days.
I actually have a client who's has a family member who's older, and she was scammed out of over $600,000, which is just astronomical and extremely concerning. I mean, this article reports that 6,000 people lost more than $100,000. I mean, I think 3.4 billion is grossly. This is probably 10% of the loss. I mean, it's absolutely incredible what's going on in this space. And the thing is these scammers are just becoming more and more capable. I mean, older people are just they don't know. Everything's so technologically focused, and they're not sure if this is an issue or that's an issue, and so forth. I tell clients, I'm like, listen, if you get something like, hey, this bill's due and you're out overdue or blah, 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 like, no one's taking your house. Nothing bad is so bad that's going to happen that you can't explain through it. And if, goodness gracious, you forgot to pay this, whatever, it's got to be an issue. Matter of fact, I've talked about this before. I had a client who was selling a timeshare overseas. Something was suspicious. She was working with a U.S. attorney through the whole thing, but she was like sending money to prepay taxes. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And she was looking, and I didn't know the whole story, but then all of a sudden I got involved, and I just said to her, this is, you need to deal with this. She did lose some money. Her children were extremely thankful. She was going to send large amounts. She started off as like $5,000, and it grew a little bit, but it didn't. I don't think it went over $20,000 or $25,000. But by the time I got involved, she was getting ready to send a very large sum of money, and it just seemed all legit. But it seemed so legit that her own attorney was telling her to send the money, and I was like, no, don't do that. Yeah, it's scary.
So my parents are both in their 80s. And I mean, talk about living through right now some of the scariest times that we've had as a family. My sisters and I've got two older sisters, myself and my parents are a family, and we're all here in the same place. So that's a benefit, having us as close as we are together is a benefit. But there's things that we just can't mitigate with mom and dad, and it's and believe me, there are things and other there's other actions that we have taken to mitigate these risks with mom and dad. As simple as making sure that, the checking and savings accounts that they typically have and are using, which we want them to have all that freedom to, is not where they're keeping the majority of their cash, right? There's a brokerage account that we have set aside for those purposes that, it's fluid, money can move back and forth, but it's another layer that, mom and dad just don't have off the tip of their brain or right in front of them, the account numbers and any of that information to be able to divulge. Because, one morning, my dad woke up to mom spilling the beans on account numbers and Social Security. And it was as early, like 6 a.m. And she thought she was talking to the banker, and they had their bank name and everything, so it was hard to defend. And beyond that, things have gotten into another level now where we have AI, or they have AI, whoever has it has got it, and can use it to replicate voices and audio, where it can sound exactly like one of the ones I'm thinking of specifically. It was called up, was using the phone number and was using the voice and audio of this person's daughter saying that they were in trouble and they needed some help. And it wasn't a big money amount either. It wasn't like they were asking for the moon. So it was like, oh yeah, sure. Guess what? They hung up the phone, and I can't remember if they had somebody sitting there with them or not, but they hung up the phone and called their daughter and said, hey, I just want to make sure that you're okay. And she was like, what are you talking about? I'm fine. Could not believe it.
Yeah, the shame. The shame. I mean, some of the listeners that we have here today are have been violated this way, and it carries a lot of shame and embarrassment, and victim-based crimes. I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's okay that you've been scammed or hurt this way. It's not right that it happened, obviously, but it's okay that you feel that way. but don't keep it a secret. I mean, as soon as something like that happens, we have clients all the time call us and say, hey, listen, I think my credit card got, hacked, or my information or my bank material or whatever. I'm just calling everybody, let them know this is what's going on. We don't move money for clients unless we talk to them, specifically over the phone and know it's them. And that's been a policy and a procedure for us for a very long time, because we don't take on email scams and so forth. We try to mitigate those that way. But that is one of the biggest issues is cyber crime. I mean, it's one of the biggest issues, from asking for, buying real estate. Hey, I need to wire this money over there, or, I'm changing my bank account to some sort of other number, or my phone number and address are changing. These are big red flags for us. And that's important. And they sound like, changing your address or your phone number doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is in our world. It is.
One of the things I wanted to say too is we get on a weekly basis some kind of a training that we have to go through on some version of what to look for in these circumstances. And if that has you curious at all about, hey, what's going on here, just feel free to give us a call. We can get you up to date on what we're seeing today and how you can just try to take some actions to protect yourself. And it's just, a lot of the time, it's a very simple thing. Like, hey, I got your phone number. I'll give you a call right back. Hang up the phone and then call them back, or then pick up the phone and call us and we'll call them. It's that simple. But those kind of things and those kind of safeguards, if you start putting those in place for yourself regularly, that's the thing. It's kind of got to be that second nature for you. It can, can that ever save you.
And coming to us next from CNN, Nathaniel Meyerson. Americans have tipping fatigue. Domino's thinks it has the answer. Now, this is a topic we spoke on a couple times, usually fairly jokingly, about the expectation to tip everywhere you go for literally no service at all in some instances. And those kind of, do-it-yourself iPad, leave a tip type of modules that, speaking of guilt and shame, we probably all feel a tinge of that when, you're looking at, which tip option do you want to have. And I've noticed them lately too, by the way, a couple of places, the zero's gone away. It's either 5, 10 or, whatever the case is. But Domino's thinks they have the solution here, where what they've come up with the program, and they've titled it, You Tip, We Tip. So if you give your Domino's driver a $3 or greater tip when he delivers the pizza to the door these days, he or she, they will reduce your next pizza purchase by that same $3, which I thought was a pretty interesting way to go about this. And I'm sure it's, there's obviously a marketing element to this to try and, garner the repeat customer. But, I thought that was a good way to keep the drivers fairly compensated from people who are just sick of tipping everywhere you go, realizing that, hey, if I am generous today, if I do tip this employee, I'll get some value for it other than just getting the pizza delivered to my doorstep.
I love this idea. I think it's hilarious that they're just kind of mocking the tipping scenario. I am just appalled at the amount of tipping across the board. I mean, a tip was meant for people who do their job and do it well, and then you tip more when they do it above and beyond. And I worked as a waiter through college. I mean, tips were important, but I worked as best I possibly could to get the very best tip I could. And I just, the expectation of it, Dan, Seth, I don't feel like my service has gone up. I think my service has gone down and my tipping has gone up. So, I mean, it really irritates me. And I'm just thinking about it. I went up to dinner the other day and they put a mandatory 20% tip on my bill. I'm like, that's not a tip.
Like for two of you, or was it the party of 8 that they were doing it for?
It was for a party of 8, but I was
right. Yeah.
I was just like, and the service was atrocious. Whatever, just moved on. I'm not going to lose sleep over it, but I mean, I just think it's real arrogance. And honestly, I feel like people put that stuff on there. I haven't had that happen in a long time, but I think they put it on there because their service was so bad. Yeah. It's
like it was optional for them. And at the end of it, they're like, oh, that was rough. We're just going to make sure we get some off this table.
Yeah.
So,
I just can't. I mean, and when you go to some of these restaurants, the tips start at 20% and go up to 25 or 30. And you're like, where did that come from? And now I've almost made it a point at times where I go to get a cup of coffee. I walk up the line. Why would I tip? I don't understand. I mean, it's not like
I think they need to put that tip yourself at the like you have to tip them and maybe tip yourself, because if I did a really good job of shopping, I might feel like I deserve a little tip at the end of all of that. Gosh,
where's my tip? Where's my tip for the self checkout that I have to do at every stinking store now? You know, no one's helping me.
So Ben, I'm right there with you waiting tables. I slung a lot of coffee in college. I've worked at Starbucks 4 times, and I've got this, so like my Starbucks partner number. I still have it. They never go away, apparently. It's so old that the last time I worked there, it was people looked at me like, "Oh my gosh, did you like start the first Starbucks?" Because it's like 4 digits, you know, and now they're like 10-digit long numbers or something. But I will say, it was different then. You know, we memorized people that were coming through the door. It was the local shop, and we knew everybody and had their drinks down, and we really prided ourselves on doing a great job. But I tell you what, if now it's like there's this entitled person behind the counter that's like, "What do you want?" You know, and when I get that, I really enjoy just going ahead and putting that 0 tip and turning it right around so that they can see I left them nothing. There you go. Thanks for that service.
That's
Goes
aggressive.
both ways, my friend. I know, it's horrible, right? No, hey, you guys, we hope you've enjoyed this little thing we call Money in the News here at Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. If you think you're getting horrible service right now, guess what? You can go to the podcast venue and leave us 1 star and tell us about it. No matter what, we love you for it, and we'll still send you some Money on Tap gear, because you're worth it. You're investing in yourself today by being here with us, and that's incredible. And we can't wait to connect with you. Guess what? We're talking about beyond the net worth, defining wealth in today's landscape. We got something for you to think about along the way. What does it mean to you? Take a note. What does wealth mean to you? Just a sentence, okay? We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. This is Dan Mickelon of Brayshaw Financial Group. Are you looking for professional guidance to kickstart your investing journey? Look no further. Brayshaw Financial Advisors are here to help. Our team of experts will provide you personalized advice tailored to your financial goals. Visit us at BrayshawFinancial.com today and schedule your free consultation. Brayshaw Financial, investing made easy.
Thank you for joining us for Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's show with Ben, Seth, and Dan.
Welcome back. You are listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. And it's a great show to be involved in today, or for you to be here with us today. Beyond the net worth, defining wealth in today's landscape. Oh, gosh, there's going to be so much that we're going to pull in here. We love to pack shows like this for you. And leave you with just so much food for thought. First of all, we're kind of the last thing that I left with was like, you know, try to write down what that definition means to you. What does wealth mean to you? For one, it's going to be a definition that can change throughout your lifetime. Okay. There's just going to be you and whatever version of yourself there is today. And then as you continue to attain or some of these milestones, those things are going to change because you're going to have a different understanding living through that lens that you're at right now. You know, and as that changes, some of the things will probably remain constants, you know, because it's going to be combination, for one, of financial resources, you know, and what brings you happiness today and whatever you think it is for tomorrow.
Wow. This is a big, big topic, and understanding wealth is different for every person. And I would say that there's a number of people out there that we've engaged with over the years. I spoke about this a little bit as we were opening up the show, that have all sorts of ranges of wealth, like little wealth, medium wealth, and lots of wealth. And then there's a difference between wealth and being rich. And there's the conversation of that, because a lot of us will walk around and be like, oh, they see the guy. Oh, yeah, he's wealthy. I hear that from time to time about people we know and things we see in the community. Oh, that guy, he's pretty wealthy. I don't define wealth that way. I define wealth, and I was telling Dan, wealth is the financial freedom to not need more. And in how you live defines whether you're wealthy. It's not, there's no number. I mean, there's no, like, if you have $1 million of cash in the bank and it's sitting in a zero interest interest account because you could care less, that's not a definition of wealthy. Like, there is no litmus test to say specifically this person's wealthy. You're wealthy when you don't need. When you live in a point in time in your life where you don't need, then you're wealthy. And that's not being so rich that you couldn't buy a new car or, get the Lamborghini of your dreams or, live in a mansion. Like those aren't definitions of wealth. Wealth is a person who may be retired, living in the home that they bought 40 years ago and raised their 3 or 4 children in. And they're living with their spouse. They're collecting their Social Security, and maybe they have a small pension, and they're taking a little bit of money out from their retirement plan. But their expenses are paid every week, every month, every year. They write their check at the end of April to the IRS, and the bills are paid. Those people are wealthy. Those people are living in a stress-resistant world that allows them to know to pay the bills. Like, yeah, maybe they have a scam event and they got to change their bank account. Maybe they have, the car breakdown and they write a check out of their brokerage account to pay the bills. They're wealthy. They're not working anymore. That's bringing in an income necessarily. They're wealthy. But to be rich is having more money than you can dream of. Rich is having so much that, at some point in time, you're not even counting the costs of expenses. You're not monitoring your ability to be a good steward, right? When you're so rich that irrelevance to money has become a part to your life. And I think that's when you can say, hey, I've gone from wealthy to rich. And that's different for everybody too. And I think, is Elon Musk rich? Is Bill Gates rich? Yeah, but where does the rich line end? It's not the top 10 wealthiest people in the world, right? There's still more rich people out. So I think when you actually start defining rich, as my perspective, I look at it as money becomes meaningless. You're not worried about returning something to the store because you want the credit on your credit card. Seth, we were buying some tile for our bathroom and I bought 6 samples. You know what? I drove the 6 samples back and I turned them in and I got my $12 or whatever it was. That's when that doesn't matter anymore and you're not being a good steward and it's irrelevant. I think that's where the rich conversation begins. And you could be a good steward and still be rich. Like you could. And it absolutely exists. But I think if you want to figure out when you hit that irrelevance comes into play. Because I meet people who are good stewards and they're like, yeah, well, whatever. I gave to this, I did that, whatever, and they're still shopping at thrift stores. Literally by getting clothes, they go to the thrift store. And my wife went the other day, went to the thrift store. She got me some shorts, she got me some shirts. I'm like, hey, this is great. Being a good steward are those types of things. People live within a standard to be responsible with their money. And you can still be rich, but when the care of it is irrelevant is when you switch from wealthy to rich.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to look at that. I think, that mindset, that perspective of, I've reached this point where, expenses don't really matter. It doesn't matter what something costs. I know I can afford it. That doesn't mean that you mismanage your life or pay no attention to your personal books, but there's definitely this level that's attained by some where price just becomes irrelevant. They just, whatever the experience is, whatever the object is, they know they can afford it and they don't care. They're just going to pay for it. And I think that's very much the common perception of, the wealthy and the rich and this, kind of a really extreme top end of the spectrum of net worth that people aspire to, and it gets a lot of attention. But for a lot of people, the simpler level of wealth to achieve is that freedom to not want more, right? The ability to just make ends meet and know that there's still a little bit left over for sure to cover emergencies and whatever other expenses come their way. But there are different perspectives to this. And, I thought it was interesting in getting prepared for the show how, Americans, based upon their age, what generation they come from, view this differently. And there was a Charles Schwab survey that demonstrated this numerically for us. I think there's value in that and considering what people think out there. And it says that, Gen Z population believes that to be wealthy, you need to have a net worth of $1.49 million. If you're a millennial, that number, again, of perceived wealth is $1.94 million. Gen X is, $2.53 million, and baby boomers considered to be at the level of $2.63 million. And I have no idea how they came to these numbers. They're very specific. It seems oddly so. But I think that plays into this perception and pressure issue that we have where everyone's, trying to keep up with the Joneses, and that ING commercial we talk to all the time where that number is just moving, following the line to reach this number. And I mean, we must talk about that at least once a month on the show. I mean, it comes up all the time, how flawed of an example that we all feel that is, and what kind of pressure that must put on people that you're literally jumping up and down chasing this fictional number that at the end of the day is totally irrelevant. It's, it really comes down to, do you have enough income to meet your goals, to pay your bills, to give you the lifestyle that you hope to have, or at least that's comfortable for you, so that you don't have to stress, what's coming due on the 15th? What do I need to pay on the 1st? When that stress is just absent from your life, I feel like that's when you've obtained wealthy status.
Gosh, there's so many different perspectives that you're able to take a look at this through. There's the like you were talking about, the generational perspective of wealth. Are you a Gen Z?
I thought that was super interesting. I thought that generational perspective was really, really clever, Dan. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes. There was also the kind of the national perspective, right? Do you live in Haiti, which, what was it? The average was in savings. Dan, what was that number?
The average, the median net worth in Haiti was $193. Period.
Right. Yeah. So you don't work in the U.S. and you are still more wealthy than, I can't remember what the number was. It's something like 90% of the world if you don't work in the U.S. because of all of the programs and money available and subsidies available for people that don't work here. Different story today. We're not going to go down that road, but it is the perspective story, right? Is where we're at. Are you nationally, are you at a level of wealth that the U.S. considers wealth, or your generation considers wealth? It's so subjective. And that's one of the things that in the very beginning here, we said, hey, write it down for yourself, because what we say today, might add and push against some of those ideas for you. And we want to do that. We want to explore that with you. But the other thing of this side of the coin is that we keep coming back to, it's got to be you. It has to be you. This is your story. This is your journey. And in building that, we're going to kind of talk about some techniques here in a little bit around building sustainable wealth. But, one of the things for me that I really means a lot to me is that that freedom point where Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if you've ever read that, right? He talks about building the income, the assets that have income. And when those surpass your needs, that's the freedom point where you can go ahead. If you have a job, you can go ahead and say, hey, I'm good. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, but we don't need to be here anymore because this over here has replaced that. And that's a freedom for people. And that, for me, is usually kind of one of those first horizons as we're trying to build up towards retirement, or that story is where those assets now provide for the income that are going to be sustainable for the rest of life, or ongoing forever, or the projects, or whatever else the things are that are in your dreams and goals, those bucket lists, right? Those are awesome things to be pulling in. And I want, as we take a break here, for you to go ahead and ask yourself that first question: what does wealth mean to you? And then start to fill in maybe some other categories here. What are some of the future things that you want to do? Goals? Do you want to give? Do you have places that you want to start putting those monies? Do you have family? Do you want to build a family? Is that wealth? What does that time look like for you around that? What are some of these other buckets that you can start to build into and have some of these ideas? Or maybe it's a number. Maybe you now have a clearer picture of like whatever your generation is that aligns with you, of the Gen Z of 1.49 million. But anyway, start to fill in this story a little bit more. Be a little bit more specific.
Seth, I'm just kind of thinking about a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, what Dan talked about. And according to U.S. News and World Report, the wealthy were defined as $2.2 million of net worth or better. That was the definition of wealthy. But what I thought was interesting was that to quote them, the average net worth of a U.S. household is $121,000. And it's more likely that the vast majority of our listeners are, in the average net worth household list. Maybe a little better, maybe a lot better, maybe a little less. But I thought it was interesting because the article points out that it says, obviously, if you're worth more than $121,000, you're doing better than the average American. And you should literally congratulate yourself. Because I think the thing is a lot of people are chasing this number, like Dan, we were talking about with the ING. They're chasing this unattainable number because it's always moving farther away from you the more yours grows, it seems like, and it's growing faster than you can grow yours. And honestly, people are scared to death. I mean, I talk to people all the time. They're like, I'm worth this much, and the stock market's at all-time highs, and I feel like it's all going to crash down on me. And I'm going to lose it all, or I'm going to lose a big chunk of it. And we're going to be back to a 2008 or 2011 or whatever it is financially. And I'm really excited for this next segment, building a sustainable wealth, because this is really where, a lot of people will be able to start, taking some of those fears away.
You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are going beyond the net worth, defining wealth in today's landscape. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey, this is Seth Cressman with Brayshaw Financial Group. Are you looking for a hassle-free way to invest? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. With Brayshaw Financial Group, you can start investing with as little as $100 and enjoy a user-friendly platform with diverse ranges of investment options. Visit Brayshaw Financial Group and start your investment journey today. Brayshaw Financial Group, investing made easy.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. You, so glad you're here. And thank you for subscribing to our podcast. That helps us out a lot at Money on Tap. And when you do that, please let us know. Send us a letter at info@yourmoneyontap.com. By the way, that's not a letter, it's an email. Thank you for correcting me on that one. I will get caught up to our generation one of these days. But as you do that, we just want to make sure that we're going to have some Money on Tap gear going to you, because it's fun. And it's what we're doing here today. We're growing together. We're being successful in our investing. And with that, it is time to jump back into our show, Beyond the Net Worth, defining wealth in today's landscape. Dan, you had some phenomenal points across the board. What do we find that is really, truly universal in this paradigm of building wealth? And then, by the way, we want to get into a little bit of 20s, 30s, 40s, things that you can be doing and paying attention if you are in those age groups and demographics and building your wealth. Yeah,
I think the common things that I find in getting prepared for this, but in speaking to people and just understanding, this idea of, how do you build wealth, presuming you're like the vast majority of us who haven't inherited it and aren't handed it in some form or fashion, but need to do it yourself, right? You need to build it yourself in some effective way. But step number one is to have good credit, and good credit is the result in the access to two things that I think are important. One, it's an indicator that you don't have a ton of debt, right? But debt isn't always a bad thing, right? You need to be able to manage debt and take it on when it's appropriate, which plays back into the good credit score, because you need to have access to capital. If an opportunity comes your way that you think is going to be the driver to get you into that wealthy space you aspire to be in, whether that's starting a business, buying a home, taking on some type of an investment, access to capital is critical. And if you can't raise the money, if you have a terrible credit score, it's just going to be harder and harder for you to get access to that money. Number two is, passive income. When you can reach the point where you have assets out there, to your point, Seth, about, kind of from the rich dad, poor dad story, when your assets are earning money for you, whether that's, again, real estate or an investment portfolio, bank accounts with today's present interest rates, when money that money's coming to you in a manner in which you don't need to necessarily go out and earn it day in and day out, your assets are working properly for you, gives you an incredible opportunity to dedicate your actual time and mental space to the effort to come up with that next idea, to focus in on that business, to manage your budget better, but understanding that you don't need to get out there and grind it 9 to 5 for everything that's coming through the door is a wonderful first step. And we were just speaking to what worked for my parents and aunts and uncles and my family throughout, is that in our instance is 2-family, but in New England and the Boston area there's a lot of 3-family homes, right? So you buy that home, you live in one side, you do a lot of the work yourself, you rent it out, you build equity, you have an income stream there. And then you have an asset to work with and potentially sell down the road. So passive income is very important. To be properly insured against the risks that you don't foresee. It's not the business risks. It's things like your life, your health, accidents, the loss of equipment, the breakdown of your car, or if you're in some kind of a industrial enterprise, the loss of those critical pieces of equipment. You need to be insured the right way, so some mishap doesn't derail you completely from your goals and lead you to an expense that you just simply can't cover. And then don't fear risk. You need to do it appropriately. There's this isn't about going absolutely crazy and taking on astronomical levels of risk. But, one of the old adages that I've heard growing up is that, you're not going to save your way there. You need to take the right kind of chances, leverage your expertise, acquire some education that guides you, have something that you believe in that's been demonstrably successful for you. And when the opportunity comes, be prepared to take that risk.
Beautiful. I love how these are just completely timeless, universal, and it doesn't matter what kind of AI you have or what kind of app you're using on your smartphone. I want to use some old dude language like, smart telephone or something like that, but I know it's a smartphone, believe me. But you know what? It doesn't really matter, because these things cover all of that. Doesn't matter where you're at.
Yeah, I was just, we were chatting about this. I mean, sometimes I wish we were like recording our, off-air piece. Sometimes, we're talking about this stuff. But, I've talked to all my kids. I got 4 children, and, anywhere from, 23 down to 13. And, so out of college, in college, high school, middle school, so I've got pretty much everybody in those age brackets. But I was telling my 16-year-old son, he was trying to figure out what he wants to do. He loves working on cars and dirt bikes, and we've chatted about just, getting a degree in plumbing or electrical or something, because it's just the demand for that is just so massive. And, those are where some of his talents are. And And he said, we started talking about taxes, and then we started talking about real estate. And I told him, I said, hey, listen, you get yourself a decent job, you make some good money and so forth. You work really hard. But the first thing you do, go out and buy yourself a duplex. That's what I told him. I mean, this isn't for everybody. It's not advice for everybody. But I said, now you've got the ability to, address taxes. Dan, you talked about your family, and that's one way your family built wealth. I think, that was one of the things I said to my son. You live in half of it, you rent out the other half, you scrimp, you save, you make it work, and then maybe you rent out the second half and you buy another one or a home or something. But that's where you actually get the leverage for the tax code. Once you own real estate, it's the quickest way to start mitigating paying just straight up standard taxes that every American pays. I know people talk about taxing the top 1% wealth. That's not going to touch what a 5 or 10% increase would do across the board to the other 99%. And so those are the things that people don't talk about. And so you need the ability to control your taxes, because that's the next piece of sustaining your wealth.
That is how Kira and I did as well. Then when we got started, I loved her. She was brilliant for it. And that property was tiny. And we squeezed into it and made it work. And you know what? There was such a freedom that came with that. Cash flowing is freedom, people. Let me tell you, because moving up into that next mortgage payment was like, oof. I didn't, I like this new place, but it has its own feel to it now, right? Because it's coming due every month, and that other side wasn't quite covering that nut the way it did before. So are you in your 20s? Great. You're starting early. Remember that. One of the things you want to do is steer clear of debt, live below your means, okay, and raise that standard of living slowly. Do not look around and take a look at what everyone else is driving or whatever, okay? Be wise with that budget. And speaking of budget like your future depends on it, because it really does. Now, in your 30s, we're going to watch your housing budget and try to make sure that you're below 25% of your monthly take-home pay on that housing piece. And golly, is that a tough one for most of us out there in the current environment. We realize it, but please, that's not a hard and fast, but do your best to stay in that. And if you have an emergency fund securely in place, try to keep it around 3 to 6 months. Okay. We do see a lot of people go well over the 6 months, and then, it's a bit of an arbitrary number, but those are numbers that we want to just have as that rainy day fund. The rest of it, we want to make sure it's going into a future place to earn more than inflation and what the current interest rates are. Typically, that's the market or other real estate. Max out your retirement savings if you have that option available inside that 401k. There's a couple of levers in there. We talk about just making sure you get the match, and maybe we'll do something else with the rest. But this is as a general rule of thumb. Try to take advantage of that. That will lower those taxes for you, and save for retirement before you save for kids' college. Get that a lot. How do we do college? Well, we do retirement for you first, because guess what? There's other programs available for college. You might feel passionately. You might want to argue with us. That's fine. You can do it however you want. That's our little bit of knowledge here for you. In the 40s, what are you going to be doing differently? Well, you're going to know your portfolio. You're going to have with a portfolio now. You're going to meet with your financial advisor. You're not going to borrow against the money in your retirement account. That's your 401k, okay? Don't do it. And if you have a mortgage, maybe you start paying it down at the little higher interest rate that you have today. We would say maybe that makes sense to do if you're, north of 5%. But if you have that good old time 2%, 2.5%, 3% mortgage, leave it alone, because you're never going to see that rate again, my friend. And that's some good money right there. I like that money. So, hey, if you're in your 50s, make sure you're taking advantage of the catch-up contributions. Downsize your lifestyle. Make sure you have that health insurance in place. Those are just some of the tips and tricks to building in different phases of your life. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. When we come back, we're going to talk beyond the numbers and this legacy that you leave.
Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. Our team of experienced advisors is dedicated to helping beginners like you build wealth through smart investing strategies. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today to start your journey toward financial independence. Brayshaw Financial Group, your partner in wealth creation.
You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Great show for you today. Grab this, hand it off to your friends, your kids, your neighbors, because it's an important one for all of us to have in our back pocket and pull out from time to time and say, hey, what is my thought here? What is wealth to me? And how am I structuring my life and my plan, financial plan, i.e., inside of this? Because we are going beyond that net worth and defining wealth in today's landscape and your landscape. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the legacy.
Yeah, I think that the next step to wealth is, when you've achieved it and you got a high level of success in doing so, it's how do you make it generational wealth? It's a buzzword we hear a lot these days, particularly hearing athletes renegotiate their contracts, right? Generational wealth. And that's really a matter of understanding two things and doing the work in two areas. It's taxes and the legal framework around your assets. We're talking about trusts, wills, things along those lines.
Dan, I would even jump in there and just say, when we meet people all the time that have real estate and they're like, well, I need to deleverage out of this real estate and I don't want to pay taxes. There's a lot of real estate solutions out there that can help you get out of the everyday management of real estate, mitigate taxes, and still stay invested, still create income, and still enjoy a real estate portfolio. There's just so many things out there you can do, but it's the step up in cost basis that people aren't talking about or focusing on, because you don't want to just sell your real estate, sell your stock portfolio, and then pass it on to your kids, because all of a sudden you've just created a lot of taxes where your kids will not pay the capital gains when you sell that when you pass that real estate on to them versus selling it before you pass away. What I mean by that is if you buy a $100,000 property and you fast forward and it's worth $1 million today and you pass away, your children inherit that $1 million property with zero gain to the property, meaning it doesn't matter that you paid $100,000 for it. Their cost on that property is $1 million. The number one tax favorable code out there when it comes to real estate. If you don't understand how this works and what you can do to mitigate it and deleverage your real estate, give us a call. That is a huge part. Seth, your wife is an expert on this. This is what we do every day. These are the things that we work on. But between the legal, the physical assets, and building a program that your children get the assets the way you want them to get, because maybe you have a spendthrift child, these are all things that need to be addressed. Legacy wealth, generational wealth, leaving that for your family, doing it right, that requires an engagement for you to do it. That says pick up the phone, make this thing happen correctly.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? You've got a lot here to take home with you to pass around the kitchen table and think about. And as you are doing that, please remember to make sure that you have happiness. Your happiness is wealth inside of this story, inside of this vision. Also welcome in the philanthropy piece, right? We find the happiest people in the world are massive givers. And if you're not incorporating that as a part of your wealth, start small, start early, start and do this in small ways that you can really give back, because I guarantee you, I have yet to hear anyone come back and say, well, that was a waste of my time or my energy or my money. It doesn't work that way in life. And so we want to encourage you to participate. And there's a lot of ways that you can give and incorporate philanthropy inside of your wealth. And exploring those with us here at Brayshaw Financial Group is one of the things we love to do. But that's another episode on another day at another time. This is Money and Tap for you today. Be successful in your investing beyond the net worth, defining wealth in today's landscape. And that's your story. We're sticking to it. Have a great week.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of Osaic Wealth Incorporated. Osaic Wealth Incorporated and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.
Well, bye.